I think we all know this picture, don't we? This is the one, the famous Windsor Walk with Meghan, Harry, and of course the now Prince and Princess of Wales. It's a tricky thing because, as we know, Katherine, the Princess of Wales, said that this was one of the hardest things to do. And I've been told from an excellent source that that's been misinterpreted. It's not about those two, Harry and Meghan. It was very difficult simply because of the emotions that she was going through. You know, obviously, as we all know, when you lose somebody so dear, it kicks in a little point and suddenly she's having to put on a brave face for everybody there, meet people, accept flowers, do all of that sort of stuff. But going around are all the problems that now she knows that she's got to offer. You know, great support to His Majesty the King, King Charles, and then having to deal with these two errant people. Not easy to do, as you can imagine. And as I've often said here on By Royal Appointment, the things that happen are fascinating because you talk to people who were there at the time and who saw things, and they tell you what they see. And the problem that you have is that it all throws a totally different perspective on the story that you first thought. As ever, let me explain. Hi, nice to see you. Welcome to another brand new episode of By Royal Appointment in a beautiful setting today. I just love bringing you the fact that we're out in the open, the fresh air. I hope you can take it through the lens. You can tell, can't you? Well, have a lovely wave. Nice to have your company. And as I often say, welcome one and all brand new subscribers. I'm so glad that you do enjoy the longer versions of By Royal Appointments. And I like telling you what I find out, because what I've often said is it's the people that you find out afterwards that you meet and you chat with at length over a cup of tea, or indeed, you know, in some sort of function, and they set to rights what you've seen, or headed lines and things like that that happen literally about sort of, you know, the royal life. And this is because they were there, they either worked for people or they've now moved on. Now, as I said at the start of the video, this is one iconic image. And my favourite bit is, of course, when Katherine, the Princess of Wales, steps forward in front of Miss Markle. And Meghan very quickly steps back. Even though the world's cameras are on her, you must be thinking, is Katherine going to go for my neck? Of course, many people would have thought, yes, by rights, she should have done, given what she'd said and the hurt and anxiety and the unkindness that had happened, of course, for our late and brilliant monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. But the other problem was this. Behind the scenes, you see, as I've told you before, Meghan Markle has always seen herself as this sort of person that could continually resurrect the monarchy and put it into the modern age, the thing that she believed she'd been sent on earth to do. As Harry's pointed out, he sees her as Diana Mark II, Princess Diana Mark II. I kid you not. And the reason for this, according to that source, is that, you know, and even most people inside the Spencer family, including Diana's sisters, could not see it. According to sources, they told Harry that they didn't feel that, you know, Meghan might settle into the world of royal life. They were being kind, but as ever, it was never enough for Harry to hear. He was obsessed by this. Now, what was fascinating about this particular situation, as I say, dubbed the Windsor Walk, was the fact that the Windsor Walk turned out to be something of a Windsor nightmare, but only because Meghan Markle, once again, was trying to pull the strings behind the scenes. Many people know the story about how she wanted to exit the car first, and should the girls, as she described her and Katherine, take one side and the boys go another. Once again, William had to step in and advise about royal protocol. Meghan thought this was old hat and felt that she should be directing things. After all, she'd been on a soap opera called Suits. Totally different, of course. We'd lost our reigning monarch of 70 years, but Meghan didn't care about that. And here's where this gets really interesting, because you see, as we all know, Harry and William are not speaking at this point, and it would have taken a lot on both sides to get it to this point. But this was all about the Constitution, the monarchy. It wasn't about petty fallouts and arguments. Now, what got interesting was that Meghan spoke to William and suggested, and as ever, we have to say allegedly, that how about that actually you leave us girls together to iron it out, and we will put forward exactly how we feel we could get all of this cemented back. After all, you know, basically she was saying, it's not all my fault. Harry wanted to speak on camera, you know, the sort of thing. So she was shifting the blame right in front of her own husband's eyes, basically saying, I can solve this for you, but I just really need to chat to your wife. Interestingly, because a person who was working literally at that moment said to Katherine, how do you feel about it? And there was a very curt and polite, no, thank you. A very firm, I might say, polite, no, thank you. And so this was passed back to Meghan, and she said her loss, and so consequently rushed back to Harry to point out to him that, of course, she tried her best to make amends with Katherine and William, who had treated her, according to, Meghan's story herself, so badly in a short tenure inside the monarchy, that this was the problem, and this was why this was the right thing to do, to move away, of course, and start their new life. Remember, this is a couple of years back now. But the bigger picture that then developed and really hurt His Majesty the King was this. Do you remember this picture, the Freedom Flight, with Harry looking, well, very wide-eyed, literally on camera, talking inside the aptly named Windsor Suite at Heathrow Airport. And there we have, of course, Doria and Meghan in the background. And he pointed out that they were on the Freedom Flight to go and stay with someone. They've never met in person. They've only had FaceTime and Zoom chats. And suddenly this individual was giving them their home to stay in for the next foreseeable future. And never in that conversation did Harry point out that His Majesty the King had very kindly offered to fund their very first year away from the monarchy, and more importantly, any other bills that they had. Suddenly the story, the narrative that Meghan and Harry were giving the world was, we've had to go to a complete stranger in order to get some security away from this family that have treated us so badly. And as I often say, then this happened. When Meghan Markle launched her disastrous business plan, literally at the height of a very, very difficult time for both, of course, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and His Royal Highness Prince William, just as she had to announce to the world that she was suffering from, of course, a terrible illness that thankfully now she's in remission for, Meghan decided, if you remember, to launch American Riviera Orchard, right? And when you think about the timing of that, and you think about, yes, you could say she wouldn't know what was going on because the royal family don't keep them in the loop about anything. And why would they? Let's be blunt. Meghan didn't think, actually, this looks really in bad taste. Perhaps I should take this down and maybe put out a short statement saying, wishing Catherine the absolute best, etc. Now, they were never chums, as I've told you before, but, just kind of common courtesy. No. That was advised to Meghan by her team at the time. But no, what was that to do with her? They weren't friends, they weren't family anymore. She'd moved on, and this was her new venture. This was the venture, American Riviera Orchard, that was going to make Meghan and Harry billionaires, free from the colossal mess that is, of course, what they thought their lives were within the British monarchy. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that Meghan really had zero time for any female members of the British monarchy. She just homed in really on the men. She figured that men would literally dance to her tune. After all, she'd seen it with Prince Harry, She tested him from the off, wearing the mother's perfume allegedly, and then making sure that, if he was going to be late, she was going to disappear. She wanted to make sure that actually when she put her stiletto heel down, designer of course, that people would take note, look at her, notice her, and more importantly, do what she wanted. She knew this was going to be problematic with Catherine, but what she thought, according to a very well-placed source, was that Catherine was just a walkover. A plain Jane that could be pushed around. And as I mentioned, that video at Windsor literally gave Meghan the wake-up call that she never really thought she was going to have to do, because suddenly Harry looked very nervous, and as I said, she thought she was going to split up, become fake friends with Catherine, and she couldn't abide the Wimbledon scenario. I know this from an excellent source. She just, didn't understand why she had to walk behind in that striped shirt and baggy pants, And the idea really that Meghan likes tennis is another farcical thing. She really sees all of these things as an entree into meeting people and connecting. It's a bit like the golf course, with businessmen. They say, meet me on the golf course and we'll get together and talk business, and that's really the idea. So Meghan at this point has decided, as I said, to stuff the fact that the world's very concerned about Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and of course His Majesty the King, King Charles. Now, her team claimed at the time that Meghan didn't want to upset or offend defend or get involved in family feuds about being crass or, just jumping on the bandwagon. Not true, really, because, of course, her husband literally jetted in for 24 hours, saw, his own father for a few minutes, according to sources, and then had to jet out. One would suspect, why did he make such a frantic call? I'm sure that he was concerned about his father. One would like to think so. But given his behaviour afterwards, you'd think, no, not really. Once again, maybe securing, one might suggest what the future might hold. You get the picture. Meghan, you remember, doesn't care for family. Not only her own father, she couldn't give a stuff about him. And, the mother is given scant attention, only when needed to be wheeled out, one might suggest, for colorisation in any product or placement that Meghan's doing. I think everything you need to know about the mother's relationship with Meghan said it all when Meghan was desperately trying to get some approval in that kitchen where she was, of course, just coming up with some dessert and saying, oh, taste the flavour. The mother couldn't care less, absolutely cracked out, not bothered, couldn't really care about what Meghan was wittering on about. She's not interested. That's not her world. She doesn't really want to mix. That's the deal, right? Now, what was fascinating, I found, was that when you move forward with this, Meghan, as I said, decided that really she, was going to do something, And the idea about that was sort of, crack on and try and make them billionaires. And Meghan had always believed, foolishly, that her own thing, the TIG, was the thing that was going to, make them even richer than the British monarchy. She thought Harry was rich. She thought she was marrying rich. But Harry only had access to so much money. I believe, according to sources as well, speaking to them, that Harry really elevated his star status and the money that he might have to spend or not. Meghan, not knowing the system, would have thought, castles, jewels, free frocks, designers, what's the problem? The problem was, of course, she wasn't Katherine, the Princess of Wales. Katherine got everything first. Meghan sat in the back room steaming at Windsor, but not for long. What she decided, literally, way back in, of course, the Megxit deal, was that she was going to make them both incredibly rich. Well, herself rich, because she looks after all the money. And then this happened. If there's one thing Meghan will never really do, is take the blame for a disaster. If you remember when she decided to launch her very first business idea, American Riviera Orchard, it was a disaster. The fuzzy video, the music, nobody really knew what it was about. Suddenly then we had these pictures of, people scooping jam up saying, oh, breakfast sorted. It's a pot of jam, it's not the gold rush. I mean, that was the thing. So you've gone from literally wearing, spectacular gowns at royal functions, meeting exactly the people that you've always craved to meet, to allegedly now stirring pots of jam in a kitchen in Montecito, and we're supposed to believe that you're happy. You see, the real goal about this was to prove to Katherine, and this really is the underlying problem about Meghan Markle. She cannot abide every time Katherine pops up on a, magazine cover or releases something. Now, Katherine, whether you like her or not, does these things effortlessly. She just looks graceful, kind, demure, and not looking for the eye line of the camera every time she gets out of the car. She knows the camera will follow her. Why look for it? Meghan is always the desperate star, desperate to make sure that the eye line of the camera will follow her. Please notice me. You've got to notice me. That's the problem. Now, moving forward, of course, what happened with Meghan was she thought she could wipe Katherine away. And all of these things, whether it be, the Vanity Fair stuff, whether it be the Vogue, the issue with all of that, she thought that suddenly the Queen would think, oh, Meghan's fabulous. And I'm going to put my allegiance with her. She couldn't break this rule that, of course, Katherine and the Queen had got on incredibly well. So free from all of that in Montecito, she tried her very best. Now, the only thing that she backed down upon in the Oprah Winfrey interview, which was a retake, was that story regarding Princess Charlotte and the fact that Katherine, if you remember, turned up to, of course, the house, the cottage, bearing flowers and apologising, which, of course, Meghan graciously accepted. Well, the story actually had to be recut and re-edited, because we all know that didn't happen. But of course, in Meghan's eyes, it had to be that Katherine was in the wrong, but she's a good person. You know, she's good. She may have slipped at that point in Lamarckle's eyes, but no, she's good. And I forgave her because she delivered some flowers. Right from the off, you see, when Meghan paints herself as being this straight down the line, easygoing person with, of course, just ripped jeans and a t-shirt, barefoot in the cottage, suddenly the very regal Katherine turns up. And the way that Meghan portrays it is that, you know, she was in full hat, gloves and sort of towering high heels. She wasn't in those things at all. They weren't in a regal attire. They were very, very casually relaxed. The reason why Katherine would have been a little bit reserved was the fact that, you know, it's the first time of meeting somebody. And then, of course, Meghan stabs her in the back by saying, I guess they're not huggers, right? Well, we've seen that's another contradiction. But again, this is Meghan's narrative. But back to the building of the business. Here's where this gets interesting. So Meghan thought the moment she launched American Riviera, and she was told by her team, everybody will want to come on board. Oh, absolutely everybody. You know, oh, no problem. You know, you will have lots and lots and lots of investors. There will be money, and no doubt that won't be a problem. You get the picture. But the bigger problem was that, you see, Meghan suddenly found that actually she wasn't that good, you know, in the sense of attracting investors' money. And this suddenly started to panic the people at Netflix, because they were told that once Meghan had said, here I am, American Riviera Orchard, lots of top CEOs would bail out of their jobs to come and work for Lamarckle. That was the plot. That was the idea, at least. And Meghan thought this was going to happen herself. I mean, you know, she's Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, signing things off, even at that point in HRH terms, to make sure that people knew it was her. And should they be called in for a meeting, they better have a very good, savvy business plan. At this point, let's not forget, of course, at this, you know, juncture, she's also got the backing, she believes, of the William Morris Endeavour agency. But they've seen this come and go. They're professionals, you know. You've still got to cut your cloth and make sure that people, well, can do something. So what she did, according to a former staff member who worked with Meghan at this period, and this is an excellent source, let me tell you, everything that Katherine did, she devoured. You know, whether it was Katherine's beekeeping, whether it was Katherine pictured in, you know, remember the video where she's walking through the woods and stuff like that, that inspired Meghan. She is 100%, without a doubt, can't move without seeing what Katherine does. Because, one simple thing, it resonates with the audience. They're beautifully shot, she looks elegant, and what she wants to do is literally try and copy the style. She studied Katherine's speeches, the way that she tosses her hair back, the way that she greets people with a forthright manner. That's the reason, according to the source, why she pushes past Prince Harry. He's irrelevant because I've arrived. But Katherine commands that sort of thing, particularly when she's out there, obviously on her own, doing her own charitable events. Meghan is baffled by her popularity. Again, back to the business. Now, as the moon bump debacle rages on, and this is all being brought on by Meghan Markle herself, she decided, and get this, she didn't confer this with Harry. It was her decision to put this video out. And as many people have pointed out, this was a rather moment, it should be, for a couple, a very precious moment, you know. A new life is being brought into this world, and suddenly you're doing this sort of rap drop song and pointing. What are you trying to do? You know, what was Harry trying to come across? Other than looking, either he's been at the laughing gas or something. He admitted that, didn't he, in his book? But clearly, what an absolute farce this has become. But you see, as Meghan has decided in desperation mode to try and now, well, revitalise herself through Instagram, she's hovered on the 2.93 million followers. It seems to drop and come back. But the popularity of her just posting cooking bits has not worked. You know, people are not interested in her. So she's turned her attention to the children. Now, just cast your mind back to how hypocritical this is, because as I pointed out in a recent video, she wouldn't give the Queen the honour of being, you know, allowed the children, the child, you know, the firstborn, whatever, to be on the Linda wing. She wasn't doing that. That was, no, I'm not doing that. She even said that in the Oprah Winfrey, I'm not serving my children up on a platter. Oh, no, because Meghan wanted to monetize them. Dress it up any way you want, but Meghan is monetizing her children. You've got that from the edit and all the things that she's doing. She can't get enough of rolling out the children. Now, my theory is, and this is just my personal theory, I think she favours Lily. And there's two reasons for that. You see, look at Archie on his birthday. He got a solitary picture with no friends, no birthday cake, no chums around him. I'm sure something happened behind the scenes, but his whole sort of thing was there he is, a lonely child, I believe in Mexico, looking out into the abyss of what his life is. Now the daughter, and cast your mind back again to when Meghan was once again given a tedious speech. I think it was in Colorado this time, Colombia, sorry. And she was giving a speech there. And she said, oh, my daughter has very much found her voice, pushing the narrative that the daughter is going to be something. And the reason for this, in my opinion, is that the daughter is a princess. She will have some kind of title. That's the thing. Well, now, at this moment at least. Now, moving forward, the bombshell that Meghan decided to reveal, literally during her flop podcast for female founders, was the fact that she'd love to go into business one day with her daughter, right? Now, the child's 4. Who thinks about that when your child's 4, right? Now, I can tell you that Meghan, according to an excellent source, has already registered various names. Oh, yes. And the thing about this is that, the names, and remember, she has history in doing this, because if you remember, when American Riviera Orchard flopped, she suddenly had this name that she'd registered a few years ago. She's very good at making sure she ticks the boxes to make sure that she's well ahead of the game. And what she said was, I'd like to go into business with my daughter. She didn't say when or where. And then a couple of days later, after that now madcap and quite frankly lunatic interview with Beyonce's mum, Tina Knowles, she produces the most revealing picture we've seen to date. And that is of her in an arty black and white with windswept hair, and there is the daughter, looking nothing like Meghan, I might point out. Of course, children change all the time, and I understand that, but he didn't really look like Meghan, to me, in any shape or form. Couldn't really see much of Harry, actually. But the thing is, she's revealing the child more and more. And the reason for that is that she's now testing the water. She's testing to see if the big brands will come on to her daughter. Because if like Baby Gap came along or Pampers or whatever, the money is the key factor. See, Harry and Meghan are really struggling financially, whatever people think. Harry's lost these court cases, he's got ongoing battles still, and Meghan Markle has no income whatsoever. The jams were a total disaster. The cost of these things is not covering the outlay, as it were. And Netflix, when she said, would you like to be in business with me? Well, there's only a business if you make a profit, and there's no profit because she decided to step back from it. So they lost interest. And as I told you previously, they've told her to get back to work. We need you to do something if you want to remain in situ. They're banging on about a third series of As Ever, but, that's again debatable. And the plan now in Meghan's mind is that Princess Lilibet, of course, the child that she now also let slip in a podcast by saying, if you get an idea for a name, don't tell anyone, just surprise them with it. Just shows just how ruthless she was in dealing that name to, of course, the late Queen. The Queen was apparently upset. It wasn't a deal breaker. It was just, I think, the way that it was presented to her. She should have been able to have that option. And, well, wouldn't you not like to do this? Or what about Diana? Or no, Lilibet, you see, she knew that that had a greater royal connection, far more than Princess Diana. And that's really the idea. The long-term grip is that Meghan will then monetize and indeed make sure that the daughter becomes a very lucrative option. Now, while she says, oh, no, it'd be interesting now for her to go back and actually counteract those interviews, because why is she suddenly very comfortable in telling the world all about her daughter, revealing so much, when, of course, she chastised the likes of Katherine for having the audacity to put out birthday pictures and, share so many things with the world, which is sort of part of royal life. The real reason is that Harry wants and remains and still would like a road back into the monarchy. And both Harry and Meghan are at a very difficult crossroads in their life because she doesn't want that. She doesn't believe they need it. And this is the reason why. cast your mind back, chums, to earlier this year, February time, when Meghan decided, of course, that she was going to be at the Invictus Games. And there she was, parading up and down in designer gear, but refusing to wear the merchandise of Invictus because she's that ruthless. As ever, I have to say, allegedly. But when you think this is supposed to be your husband's biggest charitable event, the thing that she said on the microphone, if you remember, oh, why is Daddy always on the phone at breakfast? And she said, oh, it's Invictus, but couldn't be bothered to wear the merchandise, which would have had a lot of traction. I'm not saying she could have sold it, but it might have helped. But you see, there's no money in that for her. She's not part of that, really. So she's not going to do it. Then suddenly the story goes that, behind the scenes, she had to dash back because, she had things to do. She missed the children, etc. They can go on holiday though, and she can go off to Broadway and all that sort of stuff, do the Drew Barrymore show, but seemingly not too fussed about that. But of course she had to get back because, she had things to do. And instantly when she got back, in order to smooth the way with her very now, shall we say, difficult and demanding at times Harry, she posted that arty black and white picture of them kissing for Valentine's Day. Oh, I'll share fish and chips with you wherever, you know what I mean, flattering the ego. But then very quickly, once again, while Harry was miles away, another video of her with child pops up on the Instagram. Now, also, think about this. Just a few months before, they'd gone on CBS Sunday, which is a very soft, soapy segment for that particular channel, and they talked about the perils of social media and keeping the children away. Now, you would have thought that given the fact that these children are still very, very young, and they don't really have a say as to whether they want to be pictured, albeit from the back, or albeit heard or not, to be exploited. Not bothered about that, because Meghan, you see, is looking to the future. When you look at Prince Harry, the biggest thing that apparently he said, this is again, you have to admire her marketing skills. Why does mummy work so hard? We don't want her to work so hard. What, bagging up a few peanuts on a Netflix show in somebody else's house with an alleged 80 people crew? This is ridiculous. What child says that? What child says, I want a camera like Miss and Harriman? It's just stupid, right? But these are all the narratives that work in her favour. This is what she wants to get out. So Harry right now, and this is from an excellent source, is literally so, lost in where he's actually at, because his life is crumbling around him, whether he wants to admit it or not. Whenever Meghan needs to get Harry to do something, she does the situation where she posts adoring pictures of him, say on the daughter's birthday, holding hands. Harry loves being a dad. It's the centre of his world. There he has two children that don't ask much of him other than to provide food, shelter, and a warm and loving environment. And the idea, you see, for Harry is everybody else wants something of him. You see, consequently, he's always telling us that when he's out and about and he's hearing these camera clicking noises, it triggers off all these sort of emotions that he remembers with his late mother, Princess Diana. Yet, Meghan makes sure that he escorts her to go to New York, for instance, for the Time 100 thing, just to simply open a door and face a barrage of those cameras. Where's the kindness in that if she knows he doesn't like that? Or is it just another pack of lies? But back to the children. You see, what's happening now, and this is where, again, I find this very intriguing, because Meghan, you see, is just waiting to see, by leaking out these pictures, what offers, if any, come through. She can't send these pictures out to an agency saying, what would you pay for my child to be the front person of this cover, or Macy's front door, or whatever, You have to wait for the big offer to come in. Now, I've been told from an excellent source that this is getting closer and closer. And the next idea is that a very prestigious magazine, if they can get this person on board, would be to do this struggling mum, stepping back from the business, and have one, and we know which one that will be, of the children doing an at-home spread, a very sort of curated picture of Meghan with child. And perhaps for the very first time, revealing a full picture. And the reason apparently why Meghan would want to do this is to reach out to all the moms out there who are going through a similar thing. Well, you know, they're not really, because they don't have nannies. Yeah, right. And consequently, what is Meghan's business? Making a few pots of jam that she stepped back from? None of this makes sense, right? But Harry, in his deluded mind, believes that in fact the idea to move forward would to be simply in the years to come, it will be an option for his children if they want to enter into royal life. Now think about that for a moment, that he believes that their children, Archie and Lily, will have the option to go into a royal life with people that they don't know, they've never interacted with. And let's not forget, Meghan Markle is keeping her children away from their grandfather, an ailing man battling the throes of cancer. Whether you like that story or not, it's a terrible situation to do to someone. Where is the compassion? Where is the fact that, well, whichever way you look at it, can't you put family problems aside? Couldn't Harry bring them over for a short visit? No. And you have to ask yourself the question, why are they not allowed outside the country? Now, when you look at the video that I mentioned in the early part of this particular segment, well, you just kind of think all questions are being asked inside the palace. It's a strange video, right? And so many people have come online, theorists, etc., expressing the fact that that is not a woman in the throes of pregnancy. Now, as ever, I have to say allegedly, and I couldn't tell you, you know, I've never given birth. But the ladies that I know who've given birth, it certainly does not move around at that level. But one might suggest, and this is the counteract, what they'll try and do, is that Meghan is literally, deliberately teasing people so that this racks up, you know, more interest in her. I know it's hard to imagine, but she's that demanding. Because basically she didn't care whether people were mocking, laughing or sneering. What she cared about was, you're noticing me. And that is the bigger picture. Moving forward now for Harry, he's got a huge problem, literally, with his marriage. And I believe, well, according to a source, this is how it will work out. As Meghan continues to exploit her children via social media, the most terrible thing, of course, that Harry and Meghan have raised a buck from by giving speeches about, and, you know, even Harry jokingly talking about it at, if you remember, the New York Times summit thing last November. Well, Meghan's just pushing ahead. She believes Instagram is the key factor to her future. You know, the fact that she can make people like her and her brand. Behind the scenes, the situation is getting very dark indeed. Harry doesn't have a job. Harry has no purpose in life. He doesn't really know what he's supposed to be doing. Meghan's almost abandoned him now in the idea of bringing him into the entertainment world, something she spoke about on the red carpet, if you remember. Harry loves being part of the entertainment world. Harry doesn't. He loathes it, but he needs to earn some money. Money is going out faster than it's coming in, simply because they've got a huge house and they've got a lot of security, and Meghan has a certain lifestyle that she's become used to. But you see, you don't get paid unless you deliver something. Yes, Netflix have paid money, but you know, the money that they're sort of receiving far outstrips what their actually living costs are. Harry has no idea about money whatsoever. All the financial decisions about everything running the house, according to an ex-staff member, are all down to her. She does the lot. So you can understand how this situation has developed, some might say, for the worst. Because she's no financial genius either. You know, her father would have curtailed her into many different things. And as she pointed out famously herself, she only actually came into real money, the money that she knew, once she got the bit part in the NBC series, of course, Suits. Now, the reason why the marriage is in a tricky sort of trajectory is quite simply this. Harry would like to make amends. I know you might find this incredible, but he really would. He doesn't necessarily want to be cut off entirely from his family. But of course, when he went on the BBC and said that, this is all the strings manipulated and pulled. They thought that His Majesty the King would literally come up with the books because they need security. There they are in the throes of, you know, big worries. But of course, they've been offered security. They've been offered it here. They don't want it. They want it on their terms. Now, what's happening, as I say, with Harry himself is he's now looking inwardly to see, well, where can he go? The fact that the story about him wanting to have his name changed to Spencer from Windsor was another trigger, supposedly, to get His Majesty the King to come on board and say, oh, please, don't do that. But the King is just simply too busy looking after his own health and doing the job of a reigning monarch. But Harry has no job. He wakes up every day wondering what he can do to fill his days. Meghan is either on a new idea, basically abandoning like the podcast or the Netflix thing, or whatever else she was going to do, whether it be 40 times 40, write a children's book, you name it, she gets bored, because if it isn't instant and it doesn't have the, pretensions really of making her a billionaire, why should she put all of that effort in? She believes that she is the Duchess of Sussex, and that in his name alone should open doors and command ultimate respect. The video earlier this week in which she danced erratically in an alleged hospital suite, that was really supposed to dampen down all the negative PR, but it's now escalated it to even worse. And as I pointed out, Harry really didn't consent to this, but he has lost all control over his wife. And right now, Meghan Markle is convincing him on a daily basis that the more they share of their life, the more the public will like them. And this is the way to making sure that people will embrace them back into the world that they so rightly should be fitted into. And slowly, by introducing pictures of her children via social media, as we saw this week, Meghan believes the deals will come through, not just for Lily, but for Archie too, and they have more of a long-term future. Children don't do interviews, they just sell product. And that product could be worth $1 million, $2 million, depending on how much somebody is willing to pay. And the way they'll get around this? Ultimately, it's they can control it. At least they know what they're doing. And as she pointed out, Archie and Lily just love being on camera. In fact, they demand it. Have you ever heard a child demand to be on camera? Really? But then again, this is the world of Harry and Meghan. And as I pointed out at the start of this video, she never wakes up without a new plan. And this is the latest plan. Now, whether this really dents her marriage remains to be seen, but Meghan has tunnel vision, and Harry either will have to go along or remain, literally, hanging in the back. He's already got used to that, really, hasn't he? As ever, thank you so much for joining me for the latest episode of By Royal Appointment. And I know I often say this, chums, but if you can, please comment respectfully, like and share, and of course, tell your chums. It's what it's all about. It's been lovely to have your company as ever. Until the next episode, take care.